Hello, this is Miss X Storm. Hello, this is Miss X Storm, and I am going to go over lesson 1.1 with you. These are the basics in geometry. Um, if you want to follow along with me in your course, I've simply pulled up your course page here. It's the notes on the basics. I want to go over how to read this text and what you should be doing in your notes. Okay, the learning objectives are what you need to know. When you finish reading this, you should understand the terms point, line, and plane. You should be able to draw and label terms in a diagram. Okay, dealing with points, lines, and planes, obviously. Okay, so a quick little review. So in your notes, I'm not going to, some of this stuff I'm going to say you need to write it down and not spend time during the recording. I'm going to be teaching you during this recording. All right, so list and draw pictures of 5 geometric figures you are familiar with. Easy enough, right? Do that on your paper. You need to actually do this. What shape is this yield sign? That's kind of fun. And then solve these equations, a little algebra review. Do that on your paper. If you have questions about those, you need to ask me. Okay, you can email me, you can chat with me. If you want to check your answers, you need to be responsible for your learning here. Okay, so you're not going to see answers to these, but if you need to ask me, please do. You need to read this. Do you need to write it down? I think that's the point I want to make here is what do you need to write down and what do you not need to write down? You certainly do not need to write down everything, but you need to write down the important things. The answers to the review cue is important. All right, so let's read this. Geometry is everywhere. Remember those wooden blocks that you played with as a kid? If you played with these blocks, then you have been studying geometry since you were a child. How many sides does an octagon have? What is something in real life that's an octagon? My little boy loves to say an upagon. Upagon, mommy, upagon. When we see stop signs. So red upagon. So they're everywhere. The yield sign, I'm still trying to get him to recognize that as a triangle. He knows a triangle. He'll make it with his hands. He makes it sees it all over the place. But that yield sign is eluding him yet as a triangle. He'll be 3 in a few months. So we've got geometry everywhere. Look at these blocks. Do you need to write any of this down? No, you're reading this, you're putting it in your head, okay? You've got angles and rectangles and a triangle and a line segment. You know, what is that? We're going to talk about it. An arc, a point, a square. An octagon that's not shaped like a stop sign. How about that? It has 8 sides though. Okay, so now this is what you need to write down because this is one of those words that back up in the objectives it said you needed to know about. Understand point, lines, and planes. That's what's important in this reading. Okay, so here are the building blocks. A point. You need to write this part down. An exact location in space. If you need to pause my video, please do so. An exact location in space. Now, I like to say that a point, let's see if this will let me type. A point is, it has, let's see, it is there, but it isn't really there. That's kind of weird, isn't it? It's there, but it's not really there. That's what a point is, okay? A point, how many dimensions does a point have? A point has 0 dimensions. What's something that you know that's a point or that you think of as a point? How about a map? When you look at a map, there's a point on the map. Yeah, that's a point. How about your pencil point? I keep losing my pencil, or here's an ink pen. Point, okay? Now, is that really technically a geometry definition point? No, because in geometry it's there, but it's not there, okay? I'll give you an example from when I was in college. This is one of the few things I remember from college. If you have a number line and you pick 2 numbers as close as you can get them together, like 3.9999999 and 4.00000. Okay, so as close as you can get them together, those 2 points. Is there another point in between those 2 numbers? There is. In between any 2 points, as close as you think you can get them together, there's another point because there's an infinite number of points on a line. Okay, so a point. All right, let's move back to our notes. There's pictures, you need to be able to draw it. Now, I'm not going to take time in this video to do this, but this is something that you need to be sure is in your notes and that you know. You need to draw it and label it. That kind of goes with draw. Draw and label. Sorry, that's not on the same line there, but it should be. You need to be able to write it, and then you need to be able to say it. How do I say it? And how do I write it? Now let's go back over here to our notes. It tells us, okay, here's the drawing. So you're going to draw this in your notes. How do you label it? Notice a point, you don't write point. Like when you're writing it on your paper, you don't write the word point in front of it, although you actually can. But it's just a letter. When you see a capital one letter, that's a point. Notice I said capital. A point will never be a lowercase letter. N-E-V-E-R, never be a lowercase letter. Points are always capital letters. And then you're going to say it. Okay, and how do I say it? You say point A, point L, point F. And you write A-L-F, capital letters. Pretty easy, right? Write that on your paper. Pause me if you need to. All right, a line. It has infinitely many points that extend forever in both directions. Remember, the part of the point of this lesson is to learn it, but also how do you determine what's important to write down? The definition is important. Okay, it has infinitely many points that extend forever in both directions. We just talked about how you have 2 points, and in between those 2 points there's always another point. Okay, so that's important. All right, so what do we need to know about a line? It continues in 2 directions forever. It has how many dimensions? How many dimensions does a line have? Some of you want to say 2 dimensions, but really that's just 1 dimension. Left and right is 1 dimension, okay? How do you draw it, write it, and say it? Draw it, write it, label it is write it, and say it, okay? Study that, write it down. Okay, we're moving on here because I'm getting a little long. Let's get through plane. Okay, a plane. Again, write it on your paper. Pause me if you need to. Infinitely many intersecting lines that extend forever in all directions. Infinitely many intersecting lines. That means if I take a bunch of lines all over the place, and obviously they're going to go forever in all directions, that makes a plane. What I want you to think of a plane is a flat sheet of paper. Okay? Just think of it as a piece of paper. Now it doesn't end at the edges. It goes on forever in all directions. Okay, it doesn't end. Okay, now how many dimensions is a plane? Let's just make sure we get this. Continues forever in all directions. How many dimensions? Some of you want to say 3 dimensions. Well, it's not 3 dimensions. Our bodies are 3-dimensional because we have length, we're tall. We have width, we're wide. Some of us are wider than others, like me. But we all have depth. Okay, so that's 3 dimensions. A plane has no depth. It's simply the surface of this piece of paper. It has length and it has width, but it has no depth. So it's just 2-dimensional. Dimensions. 2 dimensions. 2-dimensional. 2D. Think about a 3D movie. What's the difference between a regular old movie, which is 2-dimensional, and a 3-dimensional movie? In a 3-dimensional movie, that stuff comes out of the movie screen at you. That's 3-dimensional. 2 dimensions, it's just flat on that movie screen. 2 dimensionals. That's a plane. The movie screen is actually a plane. That's a quiz question. All right, so here's some examples. I give you the solution, okay? I would suggest maybe scroll through it. Let's see if I can do this. Where you don't see the answer, what best describes San Diego, California on a globe? Answer it, then scroll down and look at it. Try to be honest with yourself. A movie screen, okay, and that's it. So you've taken notes. My next video won't be so long, so I don't have to talk about exactly what you're, like when you're reading, how do you know what's important? Use those objectives, okay? Read. We've got to learn to read math, okay? All right, so I will see you in class, and we will just very quickly go over this and work through some examples. I expect that you know this and are ready to take a test on it now, okay? If you have any questions, let me know.